Cudjoe's intention, as stated in the introduction, is to meticulously analyze the artistic forms utilized to convey the ideological content of Caribbean literature. In Part I, titled Caribbean Resistance, an historical background, a materialist interpretation of history is applied to the historical struggle of a people who endured slavery or indentured servitude in the plantation colonies of the Hispanic, French, and British Caribbean. The pivotal concept of resistance, central to the book's overarching argument, is defined as encompassing any act or series of acts aimed at liberating a people from their oppressors, whether they be slave masters or multinational corporations. Therefore, within Cudjoe's thesis, Caribbean literature is to be endowed with a comprehensive structural foundation encompassing socio-economic and political aesthetic elements. This structural foundation within the historical continuum, with revolution as a dominant theme, adheres to a deterministic rationale in a series of chapters thematically interconnected in Part 2. The beginning traces resistance to foreign dominance back to the Incas' resistance against the Spanish conquistadors, progressing inexorably through the liberation movement. This phase encompasses pivotal events such as the French and American revolutions, which have reverberations in local conflicts, uprisings, and rebellions within the Caribbean. The narrative culminates with the Cuban Revolution in 1959. In a natural dialectical progression, we then encounter a chapter titled The Transition, where representative Caribbean writers such as Jean Price Mars, Renee Meron, Claude McKay, and Ames Césaire, to name a few, are depicted as exploring themes with a shared aspiration for spiritual emancipation. The author's primary objective is to harmonize the dialectical elements in Ritter's works with the historical events of the Caribbean. In the chapter Towards Self-Government, V.S. Reed's Conservatism in New Day, 1949, faces scrutiny. Conversely, in Towards Independence, Lamming receives acclaim for being the first writer in the British Caribbean to seriously examine the relationship between them, the colonized and the colonized, on a psychological level. Nevertheless, it is in novels like Bertine Dumina's Au Seuil d'un Nouveau Cri, 1963, which explores the efficacy of revolutionary violence in the vein of Fanon, in the chapter Smashing the Tires, where a genuine form of socio-political realism is achieved. Cudjoe contends that such concern within the writer's perspective is imperative for the restoration of the debased victim of colonial history to a state of manhood. To illustrate this necessity, the author turns to the poetry of Nicholas Gillan and the novels of Alejo Carpentier and Wilson Harris, emphasizing the crucial universality of vision that is needed. The inclusion of Wilson Harris, who is considered the least politically inclined among representatives in Harris's work, particularly in his treatise Tradition and the West Indian Novel, 1965, from which Cudjoe draws quotes in an attempt to demonstrate Harris' deep-seated connection to Caribbean history, we encounter a manifesto stating, "It seems to me vital in a time when it is so easy to succumb to fashionable tyrannies or optimisms, to break away from the conception so many people entertain, that literature is an extension of the social order or a political platform." As of 1965 and continuing into the present, Harris's work remains a tapestry of impressionistic responses within a surrealist vein, lacking the dynamism found in the works of his Caribbean counterparts. These writers, while acknowledging the inherent alienation between the artist and society as a central challenge of realism, do not attempt to negate this realism, but rather strive to imbue it with coherence and structure within a mythology of art intertwined with socio-economic processes. Furthermore, a notable value judgment in Cudjoe's assessment is his categorical statement, unsupported by documentary evidence or footnotes, that Caribbean writers such as John Hearne, Orlando Patterson, and Derek Walcott endorse an anti-democratic and nihilistic Napoleon tendency,